I was considering just making this a comment, but seemed a little bit long for that, though it is going to be a little bit short for a video. I have twice now mocked the double-bladed lightsaber design as being impractical and not really effective in combat. I've studied various weapon martial arts for decades and see critical flaws with the design which I pointed out in my previous video. It was brought to my attention, however, that Shad of Shadiversity said the design would actually work. Now, Shad is also a martial artist. I often enjoy his videos and feel he is very knowledgeable on such topics. I haven't always agreed with everything he's said, but I have always respected his intelligence and enthusiasm for mixing fantasy and practicality. So, who's right? We're both martial artists, both enjoy studying the mechanics of weaponry. Let's take a closer look at this weapon and see if I was too quick to dismiss it. So, what does Shad actually say about this design? First, let's be clear. He says,
"So it's a bit too much of a complex thing for me to make a call on right now. I'd actually want to experiment with this with sparring against another person."
So, unless there's a follow-up video, which I suppose there could be, he hasn't definitively said that this is a good design. In fact, he also says,
"But discounting fantasy and only looking at the historical context, if any, this would have to be a battlefield weapon, but it's not the best battlefield weapon just by the design of it being a sword, okay? You can still try and get it in points, but again, I was trying to get the blade to this side to kind of jab it down and I had to move it all the way around. So there are limitations because of the size."
Showing that even if this design isn't bad, it's still not good. Just so we're clear, I don't get the impression that Shad thinks this is a good weapon, just that it has more merit than he initially thought.
So again, this is actually a more plausible fantasy weapon, more than I was willing to regard it or consider it.
But I had said that this was a horrible design, so am I missing some feature that Shad discovered? Well, yes and no. To use this weapon as a polearm rather than a bowstaff is clever, and not something I was considering. Even so, I don't think this saves the weapon. First, as Shad has demonstrated many times in previous videos, polearms have longer shafts, and the martial arts revolving around them use the full length with adjusting hand positions. This is just like a bowstaff, and is impossible in a lightsaber design. Half-swording is possible with a physical blade, but not when it's a beam. Right off the bat, this means this weapon will be significantly more limited in its abilities than a spear, making it a far less versatile weapon. Shad, however, suggests new features will make up for this loss. He says that it is quicker than a sword, and that it can create an intimidating whirlwind of blades. I don't disagree that this weapon has faster striking potential than a sword. What he demonstrates can also be done with any other polearms, so, though not unique to this weapon, is a tried and true advantage. The problem is that, as these advantages already exist in every other polearm, the double-bladed lightsaber is still inferior to these weapons as it lacks their versatility, having so small a grip. In short, a double-bladed lightsaber is a less effective spear. Have a lightsaber lance then, but not a double-bladed lightsaber. Though polearms are the dominant melee battlefield weapon, they do still have disadvantages to swords in some areas, most notably finesse. Shad demonstrates that nicely here. None of these moves would be possible with a double blade or with a polearm. So the double-bladed lightsaber sacrifices the finesse of a sword and the versatility of a polearm, while only gaining in return the speed of a polearm. So what about spinning? I hear that's a good trick. The advantage of this weapon over traditional polearms is that there's more cutting surface. Though it would certainly be unpleasant to be bludgeoned by a shaft, it would be far less pleasant to be cut by a blade. Spinning a double-bladed lightsaber is more deadly than spinning a polearm. This I agree with, but I'm not as impressed with this move as Shad is. Spinning presents far more openings than Shad shows. See, when spinning, your blades are rarely, if ever, fully extended, meaning someone who is fully extended out in a lunge will be able to outreach your attack. This extra range is only increased if that's a one-handed weapon. It certainly looks intimidating, and intimidation goes a long way, but anybody with a reasonable amount of training would outreach this attack easily enough. Getting through the twirling defense is also actually pretty easy for anyone with some training. There's a misconception many have that the faster a block is, the better. This, however, isn't true. If you're always moving fast, guess what? You're predictable. Any consistent rate is predictable, and predictable is deadly when it comes to martial arts. Speed can startle your opponent, again a good thing, but once I see how fast you go, I know how to time my actions and counter. What a true blade master will do is vary the speeds of the strikes and blocks, making them surprising and unpredictable. Twirling a weapon is typically achieved by maintaining momentum, thus making it very consistent. I'm not saying you couldn't vary the speed, just that it's a lot harder and more inconvenient when spinning than when not. In short, this move would overwhelm beginners and people who don't really know how to fight, but those with training would be glad of the consistency and take advantage of it. Finally, twirling the weapon like this exposes the hands. I don't need to have longer reach to outreach you if I can aim at a closer target. A sword has a guard between the wielder's hand and the opponent. A double-bladed sword doesn't. The hands, handle, and arms are considerably more exposed while twirling this weapon. This whole sequence is a consistently timed series of openings waiting to be exploited. This would be less of a problem if we weren't dealing with lightsabers or had lightsaber-resistant material, but as it is, we're just going to repeat the movies. So, I have longer reach and a closer target, while you have a polearm that lacks versatility. In my books, that means the double-bladed lightsaber is a bad design, and whatever potentially redeemable features it has would be maintained and improved on if this were a lightsaber lance or had movable handholds as I described in my previous video. But of course, these are just my thoughts. What are yours? Write them in the comments below. And if you know him, let Shad know what I think. I'm sure he'll find a way to disprove everything I've just said. Who knows? But for now, that's all from me. Thanks for watching.